Hey everyone, I am here with Tafokints, and we are going to be talking about a very contentious topic, debate about two boxes that are like control sticks for to make an ergonomic way to play Melee. But it's been more than just that topic, right? It started with the Smashbox, and now you have B0XX and hacks working on Smashbox, and now moving over to B0XX. Where do you start with this debate?
I think it's very interesting, and one person put it very well, where it reminded them of the social network, where they took the idea where you have this one group of people that worked on this social media project, and it seems like this one person took the idea and made it his own to create Facebook. And so there's a lot of controversy on the little nuances, like who owns the rights. There's a lot of personalities clashing and a lot of mudslinging. So if you've been following Smash Twitter lately, it's just been chaotic video response to video response.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to navigate, like who's correct in this and what should we be doing as a community moving forward.
So are you with or against Zuckerberg?
Oh gosh, I don't know him personally, so I can't really comment too much. I mean, I use Facebook a lot, so I mean, I like the product, so I guess I'm for Zuckerberg.
Okay. Now there's a lot about this debate where people are talking about the money involved with it, and Hacks pointing fingers saying they're in it for the money, and Smashbox being like Hacks is in it for to make money for himself or to rebrand and make it under that 20XX brand that he's created for himself. But you don't feel like that is the point or something that people should focus on. What should the community be focusing on?
So to make it very clear, if you come into the Smash community with dollar signs in your mindset, I would call you stupid and naive more than greedy, because there is no money in Smash in terms of making a profitable venture. If you're on Shark Tank, they would say your product is too niche, and your market's too niche. I mean, so like intentions are so hard to articulate because it's very subjective, and unless you really know them deeply, you can't come to those conclusions. So I would not focus on what is this person's intent, but more look at the health of the community and what are the products and services being served to us.
How do you feel about the fact that that there is this mudslinging going on? That do you think that there is someone who's clearly right, and that it's Hacks who he basically Hacks wants to move the design along and make the best product possible, is asking for money to make a bunch of prototypes, and is accusing them of not having a laser cutter to be able to do that quickly. But then they've got a group of people who have to move at a certain pace and work together. So which do you think is the best way to achieve the best product?
So both have their philosophies. It's more the classic conflict of business versus visionary, where the visionary, they look for the best product, but they don't look at the practicalities of costs, development life cycles, and understand the nuances of business. But personally, I think we live in a world where you have to rapidly iterate to make the best products. So in this aspect, I would side with Hacks. Okay. But if I'm on the Smashbox side of things, I'd clearly communicate roles. If they want to go with this development life cycle, which I respect, you have to make it clear to all parties what are the expectations on what the product is, how you're going to iterate, and what are the timelines for everything.
Are you confident that the Smashbox can put out a good product?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big arguments that were brought up on social media was manufacturing, which is a big problem that plagues a lot of businesses. It's yeah, you can make a prototype by hand, but how can you mass produce this? They've had success with the FGC over 6 years with their products, and I think they can do a good job.
Oh, you're talking about HitBox specifically?
HitBox as a whole, the company, they've had a proven product. As far as the Smashbox goes, I still think, even if they come out with a perfect design today, I think down the road, because we don't have the thousands and millions of hours in it as a community, I think there's going to be a better design in a year anyway.
Okay. Do you think a lot of why the Smashbox has a good design, or might have a good design, is because of Hacks working with them and kind of putting a lot of pressure on them to further the design and tell them how many things are wrong with it?
I mean, I can only speculate so much because there are a lot of screenshots being shown that Gravy and Dr. Biscuits, Alicia, had designs in mind before Hacks came in, but the big question I've always wondered is how quickly was that going to be implemented into the design? And I kind of have to wonder, this is purely speculation, by the way, I don't know the full combinations. It makes me wonder, well, if Hacks did not come into the picture, would they have been so apt to give us the design 1, which I personally didn't like so much, or would they have given us the design 2 that they iterated a lot quicker?
As a top player yourself, in your opinion, a former top player?
And a high level.
A high
not
level
top.
melee player who knows what he's talking about. Dustin mentioned, or Gravy, Alyssa's boyfriend, mentioned that in his last video that hacks attacked her credentials. You know, that she's working on a PhD in I think it's human movement or
Human factors,
human
I believe.
factors, yeah, that's what it is, and it's just directly related to ergonomics, right? Like in every way possible. And she isn't a top melee player herself, and Dustin does play very high melee. Do you think that them two, even though Hacks is probably much better, you know, than both of them combined or whatever, do you think he is? Do you think they are not qualified to talk about how a layout of a controller should be? Do you think Hacks is like on his own island, is allowed to be God in this situation?
I mean, I don't think so because, you know, I consult Dr. Caitlin McGee about hand practices, and she told me that my tension was, you know, I had too much tension on my wrist when I was playing. And so, like, that's something I would have never caught in my years of playing. I think the big issue here is not so much the credentials, it was the means of communication, because I imagine that if they were in person working together and maybe the Dr. Biscuits asked Hacks, how do you like to grip buns or how to hold buns? And then she could look and say, well, if you do that, then we can do this for you. But because their primary mode of communication was on Skype, it's really, really hard to communicate exactly what you want. And I think that's where a lot of the breakdown and the angry back and forth kind of happened.
Yeah, I noticed a lot, like one of the points that was brought up that seemed kind of fair in Smashbox perspective is that Hacks would put out a design and then kind of like, you know, work really hard to sell them a design because he believed that it was, I mean, it's clear his intentions were really good, but would come back an hour later with a new one. You know, I know you've played Pokemon with Hacks.
Yes. I mean, I've discussed Pokemon card meta, and you know, Hacks is very confident, but he can be a little bit on the extreme end of his views. He'll use superlative statements like "this is the best." Mm-hmm. If you look at Smashboard's post, it's like you can only play defensive to win. So I can see the frustration that the Hitbox side has. It's like when you ask a person, "Are you sure you want this?" and then every hour they're like, "Yes, I'm sure," but they come back. It makes you lose confidence in like what the design is if you keep going back and forth. Yeah. So I can see from the Hitbox end where it could be a little bit. Actually, for them, probably very frustrating to work with Hacks on design if it's so whimsical.
Right, and then and the flip side of the argument is that he's a top player, he knows what he's talking about, and so like his input is really good, right?
Yeah. And overall, like iteration's tough with this thing because you can only theorycraft so much, and then you actually have to play, and you have to go into these different situations. It's like, oh, this moving combination does not feel nice, and there's trade-offs, and so making a magical control, not a magical controller, but making the right controller, it takes a long time, and so it's hard and unreasonable to expect that you instantly come out with one, and then an hour later, it's like, oh, like this is the best one.
So do you think, do you hope that the Smashbox succeeds?
So I look at this more big picture, and I think the big issue I have is we look at our relationships in our community and with people, you know, more outside on the community. Mm-hmm. I know that the Hitbox people have said, you know, they want to support the Smash community. I don't doubt that. But if we reject it and we have this like mob that goes against them and attacks them, it's not a good look for us because there's a bunch of people that watch Smash community who might be potential awesome business partners or collaborators in the future. And they see, well, this is how the Smash community treats outsiders. It might not encourage them to help, you know, work with us in the future. We might be burning a lot of bridges in the future that we don't even realize.
Right. So, so apart from that, do you have anything to say about kind of what the box brings to the community as an alternative form of a controller? Do you think it should be allowed to be in the game, or do you think it's better off outside or not in Melee?
I mean, I think it's great that we finally are talking about controller rule sets because that's been kind of slipping over the radar over the years, and that's something we've really needed to discuss in the past. So I think it's really cool. I also do think that, you know, the box brings in healthy competition. I actually don't have I'm like slightly negative on playing with it. I don't want the game to be about who can find the best modder that can create these unique features. I mean, I think accessibility is very important for me in some aspects. I know that people have expressed, yeah, it's more ergonomic, but I don't want it to become an arms race where somebody found a secret electrical engineer that can mod certain things that no one else can. So hopefully, you know, these become commercially available because I like other options, but I never want it to be a contest of who can find the best like hacker.
Okay, so you're worried about the slippery slope of things get better and better, and then the rule sets open up for more advantageous controllers in the future. But you don't feel like the Smashbox as it is too kind of overpowered to be introduced to the community?
Not at all. Like I played with it 15 hours and I just kind of saw that project as if I want to invest in playing in it, it would be a 500-hour project and just investing into tech skill. And to me, you know, if you're investing 500 hours in tech skill, whether it's a GameCube controller, the HitBox, or rather the Smashbox or box, and you get good with it, then kudos to you because you're putting in much more hard work than 99% of the community in your movement.
So where do you feel about the ceiling of, so people have talked about or are scared of the thought that maybe the best player on the Smashbox is, you know, 2 times better than the best player on the GameCube controller. Do you think that's true?
So there are some worries, and I think Leffen and a few others brought a good discussion on it. Dashing is very precise, so theoretically on the HitBox controller, it's uncapped, so you can actually dash back and forth faster on the Smashbox than on a GameCube controller, just with how the inputs work. So they can actually fix that, and they can put caps on it. So there's going to be a lot of nuance. I'm not particularly worried just because of the skill investment that I don't think we're ever going to reach that peak. It's like taking like an unexplored lower mid-tier character and saying, oh, this guy has a lot of potential, but like that potential, I don't think that potential is ever really going to be reached.
Oh, that's a very interesting take on it. Do you have, so you're okay with the Smashbox being used. Do you have higher hopes for the B0XX?
I mean, I think I love the fact that both are in market. I think competition ultimately helps the consumer. Whereas, you know, with the Smashbox in line, they're going to have to think of ways to make their product more appealing to the end user. So I think we all benefit. So I hope that the box and Smashbox both do well because it's going to cause them to innovate. Whereas if you just have one and they can, I'm not sure if they would do this, but they could say take it or leave it. You don't have any alternatives, then that kind of sucks.
Then how do you deal with if both products go on the market? How do you deal with that slippery slope where potentially something could get modded too far? Like when do you say no, you can't do this? You're going to be central to this conversation, right? You already have been in the past.
Yes, I do have a lot of sway, and I do know a lot of the tournament organizers that run events like Big House, Genesis. And I think I could have some influence over tournaments like Evo and CEO. I mean, I think it comes down to this. We're still discovering what are the things that the Smashbox does better. Dashing was one of the most recent iterations, and we have to kind of take it step by step. Unfortunately, we can't think of a global rule set right now that makes sense. We're just going to have to see, okay, in what cases is it better, and can we put a cap to it? So Smashbox guys already said we can limit the dashing and we can make it fair. And we're going to have to constantly have this conversation over the next 6 months to a year.
Well, it's good to have a figure like you in the community. Any closing thoughts?
I just think that it's kind of silly to attack intent. I'm pretty confident that all parties want a great product for the community, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. The way they're approaching what the best product is and what's fundamentally the best is very different, but we have to go back to this point that Smash doesn't have a lot of money. There's no reason for HitBox to go in this for money. Hax is a very passionate player that wants a really good product. They both want very similar things, and we can't forget that.
Well, I appreciate your input, and for more coverage just like this, check it out on Yahoo Esports.